Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, I am Ricardo Pino. I'm the director here at the library. And I'd like to welcome you to, I believe it's our inaugural program in our new space.
Woo! All right.
Thank you for your support. It's key for us. And so starting today, you'll be able to get I know a lot of people have been asking about any upcoming events. So as you leave here today, we will have our fine print ready for you to take with our calendar events for the next few months. Some of the things you can look forward to over the next few months include a discussion on Impressionism. We will have some crafts for young adults. We have our summer reading club, which will kick off also for, actually we have that for all ranges, age ranges, for kids, young adults, and for adults, with prizes for the more reading you do, so please read. We also intend on having, and so we are planning on having literacy courses down the line, things like financial literacy. We will also have coming up, and you'll see in the calendar of events, we do have a healthy living series, which will also be targeted for children and for adults, learning how to have a proper diet, and that will be done with help from, I believe, our dietitian from ShopRite. So definitely, please keep checking our fine print, our website. Please call to find out about all the programs that we want to be able to launch here now that we've got this brand new space. We will also, starting next week, have our summer concerts under the tent, which will be over still at our own building with the platform there, so you can feel free to bring your lawn chairs and listen to all different kinds of music for the course of the summer. Now, but the reason we're here tonight is to have Mr. Don Weise here present for us. Mr. Weise is an author, a hike leader, a past board member of the Trail Conference. Currently, he is distinctly a West Milford Environmental Commissioner and a Development Director of the Trail Conference. And we are very pleased to have him here today, to have you all today, so I will turn it over to Mr. Weise.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and let me know if you have any trouble hearing tonight, okay? I normally have a pretty loud voice, but let me know. And also, I want tonight to be useful for you guys. This is casual. I want this to be a helpful presentation. So I encourage you to take pictures, take notes, whatever is valuable for you, and we'll have a good time. My kind of hiking career started at the tender age of 8, 45 years ago, I guess, more or less. And my folks were Chicago people. They were flatlanders from by Lake Michigan. And they came out here to the East Coast, and they thought they died and went to heaven. They loved all the trees and all the hills and the trails. And my dad made a point of taking me out on the trails. It took a lot of years to get up to West Milford. And one of the things that got me up here was a book called Circuit Hikes in Northern New Jersey. And a guy named Bruce Schofield wrote a book, and I'm following his book religiously, going on every hike, and every darn time he's taking me up to someplace either in or close to West Milford. And 287 wasn't completed yet, so it was a long drive, and I was cursing it. When I got up here, I realized why, because the hiking here is fantastic. So I've had the good fortune of being able to hike all around this area, quite a bit in the Alps and the White Mountains and different places around the country and Europe. And when I came back from living overseas, I had the chance to move back to the New York area, and I chose Ringwood and then West Milford as my home. So it's been a long and fun trip. And I always say that as a hike leader, I've been hike leading now for about 25 years, and it's a lot of fun. There is responsibility, of course, that goes with hike leading, and I assume that's why some of you are here as well to learn a little bit about leading hikes successfully. But leading hikes is really the easy part. The hard part is what the volunteers at the Trail Conference are doing. I describe the Trail Conference volunteers as like the elves in the woods. There's 120 miles of trails in West Milford, and if you weren't a hiker, you probably wouldn't know it. We have signs up now and some kiosks and things, but it's a pretty well-kept secret. And we're not like a hiking club. I lead the West Milford 13ers group here. But the trail conference is just quietly out there working in the woods, keeping up a trails infrastructure that really supports the local economy in Ringwood, West Milford, all around the area. And so 2,100 miles of trails are what we currently maintain. We also are building trails, and we're protecting lands for trails, usually in partnership with land trusts and such, and advocating for hikers and open space lovers' rights. So that's kind of what we do. There are 2,400 volunteers plus right now doing about 100,000 hours of labor. And so it's a big job. And this is kind of where you're going to find our trails, all the way up north of the Catskills. I know that's a little hard to see, but look for the red. All the red lines are trails. So we maintain all of northern New Jersey. That's about 700 plus miles. The Appalachian Trail across all of New York and New Jersey, from the Catskills to Connecticut and the Delaware Water Gap to New York City. And this is the West Milford, Ringwood, Mahwah area. All that red is trails, and it goes south as well. So it's crazy. We are blessed here. And summer is a wonderful time to enjoy all the trails. We've got an Appalachian Trail maintainer in the audience, Janelle. Thanks for your service. And Janelle is out there enjoying meeting through hikers and giving trail magic to northbound through hikers. So it's great. You've got, the raspberries are coming into season, the blueberries are coming out, the rhododendrons are in full bloom right now. Your pack weight is lighter because you don't have to carry as much warm clothing. And best of all, there's no hunting. So a lot of great things about hiking in the summertime. But also there are some things that you have to be particularly careful of in the summertime too, that just some are obvious and some don't immediately come to mind. So the first part of today's talk is going to focus a bit on summer hiking safety tips, both for you and for you as the leader of groups. How many of you hike on a fairly regular basis? That's great. And how many of you lead hikes? And by that I mean your family, your friends. Okay, how many of you would like to lead more hikes? Okay, good. So a good crowd here. So my top 10 tips for safe summer hiking. Let's get into it. And again, take pictures, take notes, whatever's helpful to you. What I try to do is keep in mind that leading a hike or going on a hike means that you're all as strong as your weakest link. So the first thing I want to do is take a realistic gut check of my slowest hiker. What can he or she handle? How fit are they? How agile are they? Are they a risk for twisting an ankle? That type of thing. I also try to think about mileage differently than roads because, a mile on the trail is about like 2 miles on the road, depending on how the terrain is. And I also try to anticipate things like elevation changes. How hot is it going to be? Are there difficult water crossings? And then once I have the hike planned, I'm thinking about, okay, what are the bailout options? What if the weather turns? What if somebody twists an ankle? How do we end our hike gracefully early if we want to? Tip number 2, mapping out the route. What you're looking at is the trail conference maps on the right. On the left, you're looking at my book, which is kind of like a ready-made trip planner. And then in the middle, you've got your smartphone, which you can download with an Android or Apple map app. The information on where to get that, it's a little bit complicated, so you want to go to nynjtc.org. That stands for New York, New Jersey Trail Conference.org, and then /PDF maps. Now, the cool thing about having it on your phone, a couple cool things about having the map on your phone, is that, number one, you don't need a cell signal. Okay, as long as you have an eye to the sky, it operates off your GPS. Okay. Number 2, it has a little flashing dot where you are. Okay, so great if you can read maps and that, but if you get off the trail and you don't know where you are off the trail, it'll show you where you are off the trail. And as you try to hike back to the trail or where you think it is, that little dot's either going to be moving closer to the trail or farther away. So it's a real game changer as far as, preventing emergency rescues and a lot of lost hikers out there. So great tool to have. So again, that's, I'll just go back, nynjtc.org/PDF maps. Tip number 3, timing. What you're looking at here is the West Milford sunrise and sunset times for today. And sunrisesunset.willieweather.com. That's where I go to find out what it's going to be like on my hike day. Last light is at 9:05. So if you're going to the fireworks tonight, that's about when they'll start shooting off fireworks in West Milford. So know your times. I always try to schedule my lunch breaks or cool-off breaks in the stream or whatever around midday and try and end well before sunset and carry a working headlamp, preferably one for each hiker. Unexpected stuff happens out there. It's a fact of life. And if you lead 600 hikes over 25 years, you see things happen that just shouldn't have happened but do. So tip number 4, fueling and hydration. Does anybody ride bikes competitively or run or do any kind of heavy sports? You're like a 100-mile biker. So one thing that hikers and hardcore hikers and runners and long-distance bikers know is that the time to start hydrating for a summer outing is the night before, because our bodies and our cells can only absorb so much water at any given time. They say if you down a bottle of water, 2/3 of it is going to go right through you. So hydrate before, bring at least 2 liters of cool water for a moderate hike, more for a more strenuous hike per person, and then fueling tips. One thing is I do encounter in summertime, I get people who get tired out and dehydrated. They also get muscle cramps, and muscle cramps can come from dehydration, but there's 4 other things they can come from. Anybody care to hazard a guess?
Lack of salt.
Salt, number 1, yeah.
Potassium.
All right, that's 3 out of 4, and calcium. But salt is the surprising culprit. A lot of us are really careful about our salt intake, or we take our Gatorade or whatever electrolyte fluids we're going to take and we think that's taking care of our salt requirements. I bring salt with me because when somebody's really cramped up because of heat or dehydration, that together with water is the most likely thing to bail you out. The other thing is this goo. Can you see that up there, that little packet of unhealthy, sugary stuff? It's great as a bailout. I don't recommend a steady diet of it, but it's really great to have in your pack, and it weighs nothing. So I like to pack things that will keep you warm, keep you dry, keep you comfortable, prevent you from getting sunburned and bitten by bugs, all things that are light in weight as possible, because we want to have fun. I'm not wearing it today, but I often wear that kind of shirt in the summertime. And it's one of these shirts that's made of polyester, and you can wring it out. It has air vents in the back and that. They make sunscreen that doubles as bug spray. For warmth, for that unexpected night out in the woods, or the unexpected 4 hours until somebody picks you up kind of thing, I always carry an emergency space blanket. Weighs nothing again, and it's just good to have. A bivy sack. Anybody familiar with a bivy sack? Yeah? No? Mostly no. A bivy sack is like a small sleeping bag that you can fit into your backpack. It's pretty light, but in the event of an unexpected night out in the woods, let's say it goes down to 45 degrees, not all that cold, you'll be really glad you had it in your pack because it'll keep you warm and a bit protected. As far as footwear, I have matching footwear today. I like to wear higher topped boots, but it's entirely up to you. Trail running shoes are made more sturdy than ever these days. They're more stable than ever, so you can go with less weight and without the high tops. But if you have newer hikers or children that you're hiking with, I recommend you get them higher topped boots, just so you know that they're good with their ankles. So heat's a factor, but so can cold be a factor. Elevation changes everything, as they say. And whenever we're dealing with cold weather, we want to stay dry. So the trick is, let's say we're hiking up in the Catskills, high peaks, or in the Adirondacks or the Whites. As we're hiking, especially if we're going up the mountain, we want to try and manage moisture, not sweat. You don't want to sweat. So if you're feeling warm, you want to take off clothes and be comfortably cool as much as you possibly can, because that will preserve your fluids, and it will also keep you from getting cold when you get into the chilly weather. My first hike, I did the Catskill 35 peaks. Anybody familiar with that? So it's a peak bagging challenge. They're climbing the 35 highest peaks in the Catskills, which you wouldn't think it'd be that tough, but it is. They're all over 3,500 feet. And what they didn't tell me is that most of them don't have trails, or more than half of them don't have trails. So I decided to do my first trailless peak with a group of people, just to play it safe. January 1st, nice cold day, and we started out at sunrise, and we headed across this log over a river. And it was just a single log. It was maybe this wide, scored on the top, a little bit frozen, and they're all just walking right across it. And I did the butt slide because I was afraid to walk across it. And then we crossed the creek like 2 more times before we eventually started bushwhacking up to the top of Rocky, the lowest peak in the Catskills, but the most difficult of all. It was all balsam firs. It was such an arduous challenge to get up it. We get to the top. There's a canister you sign that says you've been there, and everybody sits down to lunch for about a half an hour. So I'm sweating, I'm tired, I sit down and I'm freezing. So one thing I learned on that trip that somebody told me is take off your innermost layer, the sweaty one, next to your skin, and maybe put a dry layer on if you have it. And that changed everything. Life was good then. So people's favorite place to go to high elevation in the Northeast is, of course, Mount Washington. Mount Washington's only 6,000 feet above sea level. It's not that big, but it's known for its extreme conditions and changeable conditions. So if you are planning a trip there, 1935 would not have been 34 would not have been a good year. That's the year they had 230-mile-an-hour winds and minus 47-degree temperatures on the mountain. So typical day in June, I should have put July up here, but typical day for a June hike, the average low would be 39, the average high would be 45, and the lowest ever in June was 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So enough said about summer hiking on the big mountains, or even the medium big mountains. The other thing about summiting places like Mount Washington is that the summit is the highest spot, and it's most vulnerable to being struck by lightning. The thing that I try to keep in mind when I'm taking people on hikes is I don't want to be anywhere outside during a lightning storm, even down in a hollow, because the only real safe place to be is indoors during a lightning storm. What I try to do as well is check the forecast, not just the forecast, but let's get a little more specific than that. Let's check the hourly forecast when we expect to be out and when we expect to be at the highest elevations. And also, what was the other? Oh, and the other thing is trying to get as specific as you can to where you're going to be. Like, if you're going to climb Hunter Mountain in the Catskills, everybody know Hunter, the ski area? You can plug in Hunter, New York, or you can plug in Summit Hunter Mountain and get a completely different forecast. So that's another way to be more specific and increase the chances of not encountering bad conditions. Tip number 8, leaves of 3. We were just, my family and I were just out in Waiwayanda, at the edge of Waiwayanda, in a backyard playing volleyball. And the one thing that is true of poison ivy is poison ivy always hangs out typically at the edges of the forest. So it's not in the open air, it's not in the deep woods so much, but at the edges of the forest. Alternating leaves, not opposite leaves, no thorns, and can be shiny or reddish in color. So this is a pretty good picture of poison ivy for those of you who aren't already good at identifying it. The only other thing I'll say about poison ivy, besides avoid it and wearing long clothing, is use Technu on your clothing, on your skin beforehand. It's a good preventative, and it's good for immediately after the fact. If you do encounter poison ivy and you don't have any of those, very cold water is one way to help get it off. It's not the best, but it helps. And if you have been walking through poison ivy, I throw it right into the washer and then into the dryer, and then run the washer through one more time to get rid of the oils. It's all about the oils. So, any questions so far?
What if your dog has been in it?
Say again?
What if your dog has been in it?
Ah, yeah, that's an issue too. I mean, Technu could help with taking it off the fur, but that's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Would you like to describe one of the incidences recently that you said you run into things that you don't expect?
Yeah, bless you. Well, one thing that happened was we were on a December hike, and this was some years back, but I was hiking with a group of people. Wasn't a very difficult place to go hiking. We were on the Hewitt-Butler Trail, in fact, down by Macapin Road. And we were hiking up to Glenwild Avenue. And so we were kind of like right in the middle. So only about 2.5 miles from a road at any given point. But an older gentleman was with us. He fell and he broke his shin, his ankle, something like that. And we ended up having to help get him out. And he was a trooper. He was a real sport. But that changed everything. The hike was completely aborted, and we, didn't have our hike that day, but we got him out. And we didn't have a cell signal either. When we finally got to a cell signal, that's when we called an ambulance. And then he had to wait a while, So it was cold, and he ended up, somebody gave him an emergency space blanket, happened to have one on him, and somebody else gave him their clothes. But, if you're hiking by yourself out in the woods, that happens. I mean, his son said he had very brittle bones. It was a fluke occurrence, kind of thing. But that stuff happens, and, So I do like to hike in groups. I've gone on many trail runs out in the middle of the woods with nothing more than an ignition key. But I've gotten a little older and wiser. Chances are nothing will happen, but it's about that 1 in 1,000 chance that something could happen. So just about managing risk to me. So all the scary stuff, we're starting getting it all out of the way early. Ticks, snakes, and bears, oh my. So ticks are obviously a big problem. This is a bad year for ticks because, 1, it was a warm winter. 2, we had a bumper crop of acorns. Acorns mean lots of food for mice. Lots of mice mean lots of ticks. Lots of ticks means a problem for us. And in the early season, like right now, deer ticks are exceptionally small and hard to spot. They get bigger as they go. But all ticks are a problem. I just basically treat a tick check, a thorough tick check in a shower after every hike as just a normal course of action these days. And there's no reason to be afraid to go out in the woods because of ticks, but you take your precautions. I used to laugh at the hikers who used to tuck their pants into their socks and that, because it looks kind of ridiculous. But, I'm a pant tucker now. What can I say? DEET helps in controlling ticks. It's not the be-all and end-all. Permethrin is something that you can spray onto clothing. You don't want to spray it onto your skin. That really keeps them off. Snakes are the other thing. This is snake season right now. We do have rattlesnakes in this area. They're considered an endangered species, except in West Milford. But what I try to do out on the trail, I'm usually the one in front, so I watch. I don't step where I can't see, and you just have to be an eagle eye. Snakes generally don't want to mess with you. Most wildlife doesn't. It's just if you step on one, I'd get a little upset too. So. The big snakes we have here are rattlesnakes, eastern timber rattlesnakes. Some copperheads, not a whole lot, but those are the 2 venomous snakes that we have in this area, and the rest are non-venomous, but you don't want to mess with them. So the black snake is the one that you see all the time, the black rat snake and the black racer. Not venomous, but they're aggressive, and I leave them alone. If you do encounter a snake bite, I really recommend you check out this Snake Safety American Hiking Society, because that can give you a lot better detail than I can. But if you have someone bitten by a venomous snake, you want to keep them calm, try to get them to safety without exerting themselves too much. It's kind of an oxymoron if they have to hike out, but try to do that, and do not elevate the snake bite high. You want to keep it low. So if it's usually a bite on the ankle, you want to keep it down there. Keep them down there. Everybody knows about bears in West Milford. How many people are from West Milford here? Woo, all right. So everybody's had kind of a bear encounter pretty much in their neighborhood, trail, lifetime? Okay. So I do a talk on bear safety. I usually do it in the fall when they go into this phase called hyperphagia, which is like what they used to call on Saturday Night Live mass consumption. Remember the Coneheads doing mass consumption? So they're feeding up for winter time. And but we run into them. It's just that bears in the woods generally avoid us. Unless they're conditioned by food. I try to seal up all my food tightly and keep them from smelling it as much as possible, and respect their space. It's great seeing a bear, but see ya. My best bear stories were once here on Bearfort Mountain right behind us. Ed Spurko, he was the president of Pine Cliff Lake, maybe he still is, I don't know. He and I were clearing a trail back there, and we saw a bear coming from the right-hand side of us, maybe 100 yards away, 150 yards away, but he was running toward us at a high rate of speed, and we were scared. And we decided to stand our ground, because that's what you're supposed to do. And then Ed picked up a big rock and threw it on the ground, and bear's still coming, just as fast as ever, right at us. So we finally got scared, yielded our ground, stepped back down the mountain. Bear kept coming right where we had been, and then kept going. So it was just a bear on a mission. It probably didn't even think about us. But boy, we definitely, we were scared. We'll just leave it at that. And the other story I have is about getting too comfortable around the bears, because I was hiking on the Highlands Trail over by Buckabear Pond, and I'm hiking back toward Clinton Road, and there's a big male bear up on the top of a rise eating blueberries, and I thought, okay, well, this is the only trail back. I'll just make a big loop around the bear, and then I'll get back on the trail, because there's no other way back, right? So that's what I did, and the bear started watching me and started to get really annoyed that I was coming so close to the berries and to him, what he thought was too close. Long story short, I got a bear escort down the mountain for about a half a mile, looking and talking the whole way, and I made it back to my car. But if you can, even if it means changing your route, sometimes it's really worthwhile to just change course and avoid trouble. Don't stare at the bear, and don't run. Most of all, don't run. One last bear story. We had a lady named Stacy Kozel come to the trail conference at our gala last year. And she was a really nice lady from Ohio. She had thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail, and, average slow rate of speed, nothing unusual about her, except that she had lupus like 2 years before, and was literally lying in a hospital bed, paralyzed. She recovered to the point that she was able to walk using computer-controlled braces. So she essentially can't stand on her own, but she hiked the Appalachian Trail with the help of these braces. And so she was walking through, and she was with a bunch of Tennessee hikers, where they have a lot of bears too. And they encountered a bear, 5 or 6 of these through hikers. And there she was standing with her poles, and they all decided they weren't going to run away. And the bear did a bluff charge toward them. And they all ran, except Stacy, because she couldn't turn fast enough to run away. And so she put out her poles like this and just squinted her eyes, and the bear did what they usually do, and just veered off to the side. And she was like everyone's hero, because she was the one who didn't run away. So, signs: huffing, snapping their jaws, swatting at the air or the ground is a sign that you're too close. back off if that ever happens. These are the signs of bears. You probably have seen or seen things like this before. This is where they den up. They can den up in rock caves. They can den up in fallen trees, even in rhododendrons, so in the wintertime. So you can encounter a bear kind of unexpectedly in the wintertime that way. Where are the bears going? Bears are, they've been coming from Pennsylvania. They've been somewhat established here. If you look at the New Jersey map, you can see over time how the bear population has expanded across New Jersey. And they're also moving up into northern Orange County, into the less forested areas and across the Hudson. And the reason that happens is because the bears, when the males are born, they live with their mother. The males need more space. They get kicked out of their dens, and they have to kind of expand. We average about three cubs per litter, and a mother bear has litters about every other year if she's healthy. And so you do the math. Bear population's expanding, and that's what's happening around here. Obviously, there wasn't hunting for a long time. Now there's hunting. That's a whole separate issue that I'm not going to touch with a 10-foot pole, but bears are on the move. And my top 10th tip is knowing when to say when. I talked about the guy who broke his ankle and shin. I've aborted hikes. It's embarrassing or hard to abort a hike, but it's really the way to go. And I know from climbing mountains that when you're approaching the summit and you're having trouble, you're still less than halfway done with your hike. Almost all the fatalities on Mount Everest happen on the way back down. That's certainly true of the Matterhorn as well, which is not that as difficult to hike, but climb. All right, so let's talk a little bit about leading hikes. A couple of you said that you'd be interested in leading more hikes. I want to talk about leading hikes for kids and novices. I want to make it fun for them as much as possible, so that they're not bored, they're not too tired. So I try to choose hikes that have a lot of payoffs for a little bit of effort. I also try to pay attention to what they're doing, what they're feeling, scheduling water breaks, and involving them in the route plan, so that they're part of the whole process. Obviously, be prepared, have a well-stocked pack with drinks, snacks, first aid, water, and my favorite tip is to bring another child, because that changes everything. All of a sudden, it's fun, and keeping an eye on them around dangers, and just having a lot of fun. So, how many of you follow trails on a regular basis? You kind of know how to follow the trail system pretty much? Okay. The way I describe it to people, if you're trying to teach others, is that pretend you're reading a map and you're hiking north. So if you're turning right, it goes like this. You're hiking north and to the right. If you're turning left, it's north and to the left. Start of the trail, I look at it as you're hiking north. You're starting at a dead end, and you're hiking north. Okay, so 2 blazes, 1 blaze. And same thing for the end of the trail. A spur, I don't know how many of you have seen that before, but that's on the left-hand side at the bottom is the marking for a spur. It happens all the time. You get a missing blaze, or you get a fallen tree where there was a blaze, or you run into hikers hanging out in the middle of the trail having their lunch. You talk to them, and then you start hiking, and you can't find the trail. So losing a blaze is a common occurrence. If I lose the trail, first thing I do is turn around, look back, try to find the last blaze that I came from, and start over again. And a lot of times, the most popular trail isn't the one that's marked that you're actually following. So anyway, if the route isn't making sense to you, if nothing is making sense, turn back. My first hike in Northern Green, anybody hike in Northern Green State Forest? My first hike in Northern Green, getting to know West Milford and Ringwood, was through this Circuit Hikes in Harriman book. And they said, okay, turn onto Snake Den Road and park at the parking area on your right, and then follow the red trail to the blue trail to the green trail. Okay, so I followed the red trail, and then there was a blue trail. It was to the left, not to the right, but I followed it, and then there was nothing else. Everything else was totally unfamiliar. So about 12 miles later, I finally figured out my way back to the car. And so, yeah, you guys know Snake Den Road used to be a big, giant horseshoe, and now there's a park in the middle, and now you've got 2 Snake Den Roads. So I went to the wrong Snake Den Road. Okay. I do like to write out the route plan, even if it's only 3 trails. I just kind of jot down red, make a right on blue, make a left on green, and makes it idiot-proof. And so those are my tips. So now that you guys are all experts in getting ready for your hikes, let's go on some hikes. Again, I was moved to write the book, Circuit Hikes in Harriman, after having a lot of fun writing the West Milford-Baker's Dozen book. And I'm working on a new edition to it, but I'm not there yet, so it's coming. But the one thing that West Milford-Baker's Dozen didn't do was it didn't take you in a nice, neat loop fashion. It usually took you up to a peak and back down again. So I noticed the same problem with Harriman. Harriman is this awesome place to hike, and I used to use the guide Harriman Trails. Have you ever heard of that one? Seen that book? It's like the Encyclopedia Britannica of Harriman. It's great for a hike leader, and it'll take you from one end of the trail to the end, and that's it. So I decided to get a ready-made book of circuit hikes in Harriman, hikes that start and end in the same place. And you've got 250 miles of trails to choose from, so why not? And the best thing about Harriman is that there's no hunting, so you can hike year-round there, but it has all kinds of great stuff. Huge iron mines, lots of lakes, big views, views of the Hudson River, you name it, it's there. And with 37 hikes, you'll never have to car shuttle, and you could maybe even take the train there if you wanted, depending on the hike. So some of my favorite views, I have a bias about the best 360-degree view as Bear Mountain. Bear Mountain is popular for a reason, and it's where my wife and I got married. So, so we had a backup plan, but the weather held out, and we got married on the summit, and then we went down to the Bear Mountain Inn, and everybody partied and had a good time. Bald Mountain, if you have the first edition of my book, it has a kind of a green landscape, and that's taken from Bald Mountain, which is this amazing view. That's not pictured here, sorry, but it's on the other cover. A great guy named Nick Zingoli. You got to check this guy out. He's in Sugarloaf, New York. He has the Exposures Gallery, and he's a real friend of the trails. I asked Nick if he would mind too much getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning so he could take a twilight morning photograph from Bald Mountain looking at the Hudson River. And by the way, could he give us the photo for free so that we could do it for the trail conference? And he said, sure. How big's the climb? Well, I said, about 1,100 vertical feet. Sure, no problem. So he did that, and then he took this circuit hikes. Let me just grab that real quick. He took this great photo as well, so and donated that as well to the book. So a great guy. Pine Swamp Mine is a mine that you can get to pretty easily from Seven Lakes Drive, Lake Sconatati. You're nodding your head. There's another one called Bradley Mine, but I'm not recommending that you go to it because it's not part of the park, but it's called Bradley Mine. It's on the map. It's amazing. And the park has a lot of really great rock scrambles. My favorite is called the Lemon Squeezer, but there are a ton of others out there. The Lemon Squeezer is just this place you squeeze through, and then you end up on the top, and you're on a beautiful mountaintop. Speaking of mountaintops, you get nonstop views on some trails. The West Mountain and Timp Trail are super for that. The Ramapo-Dunderberg Trail takes you all the way across the park. Ramapo-Dunderberg was actually the first trail ever built in this whole area. It was even before the Appalachian Trail. So the way that trail came about was a bunch of guys got together in a lean-to. They were the heads of all the major hiking clubs. A guy named Benton Mackay, have you ever heard of that guy? Benton was the founder of the Appalachian Trail and what would become the head of the Palisades Interstate Trail Conference, which very soon became the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. So they're in this lean-to in the city on the rooftop of Abercrombie and Fitch. And they decided that they needed to build a trail across Harriman because Mary Harriman had donated her land in around 1910, and they needed to turn this into a park. So they built a 24-mile trail across the park. They did it from the fall of 1920 to the spring of 1921. Pretty quick and dirty job. But based on that success, they started building the Appalachian Trail across New York and New Jersey, also starting at Bear Mountain and working outward from there. And so the AT was born. Cool places to check out also. If you're in Harriman, if you're using the book, I'll take you to Stockbridge Mountain and this great rock cave shelter. It's a natural shelter. And lots and lots of lakes, some that are even legal to swim in. And my other favorite thing to check out in Harriman, besides all the views, is this thing called the Dunderberg Mountain Spiral Railway. And if you're expecting to find a railway there, you won't, but you'll find that they were building one in like 1890. And they never finished it, but they dug all these tunnels, and there are all kinds of great paths around the mountain. The idea was that you'd take a cog railway up to the top of the mountain, click, 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 all the way up, and then you'd swing around and use gravity to have unbelievable views as you came down. So it never came to pass, but we can enjoy it on foot, and that's what and explore the tunnels. Toughest hike in Harriman is Pinget Mountain. I just did that about a month ago. Anybody ever done Breakneck Ridge? Breakneck, yeah? Okay. That's a tough one, the toughest in the area. Pinget, I'd say, is about the second toughest. The big difference being that when you hike Pinget Mountain, you're not going to have 10,000 other New York, yuppies and millennials and stuff keeping you company. You're going to be pretty much on your own. Anyway, lots and lots to find in the park here, and that's just West Milford. So the idea of Harriman's, Circuit Hikes of Harriman, is to be a ready-made guide that kind of takes a lot of the guesswork out. What you'll find is the time, distance, difficulty, what you'll see in terms of attractions. I give you GPS coordinates so you can find your way right to the trailhead, because you'll need them, because there's no street address. And the other thing is this, in the bottom right, is an elevation profile. So that's the real telling story of the hike, how difficult it's going to be. And you'll get used to reading that really easily. You do one hike, and you'll get in tune with how that works. Other places to find hikes are on the Trail Conference website. There's a Find Hike feature, pretty easy, and it'll take you to places like this in West Milford. And it will give you all the coordinates you need. It'll give you basically everything but the map, okay? You still need the map. And if you're hiking in West Milford, North Jersey is the map set you want to choose for the most part. Pretty much covers everything. About West Milford. This is this place that New York City hasn't discovered yet. It's really kind of cool. It's been a long time. We've been talking about how great it is to hike in West Milford, but you've got lakes on the tops of mountains. You've got rhododendrons in bloom now. You've got this kind of pudding stone stuff, the purple rock with the white speckles in it. It's a great place, and we'll just keep that secret to ourselves, except for anybody watching today. The Barefoot Fire Tower, the Ernest Walter Trail has lots of rock scrambles, great views of Greenwood Lake, and who knows what that one is on the bottom? Monksville Reservoir, right, from Horse Pond Mountain, right. Now, some of the other hikes that I like to take people to are a bit off the radar. The best way to find Flagpole Vista right now is to go up to the bridge that's under construction and the traffic light there. You know, when you go up Warwick Turnpike and you have to stop, it's right by the upper light. So, and there's a small unmarked trail that takes you up to a beautiful flagpole view. And it's a little tough to follow. It's described in my old book, but it takes you to the most amazing view. you can actually see it go up in the afternoon, and you'll see the sun hitting the windows of the skyscrapers in Manhattan and reflecting. And then at the same time, you'll look out and you'll see Greenwood Lake, and then off to the left and up above, you'll see Upper Greenwood Lake. So it's really cool, plus Barefoot Mountain. Jennings Mountain is in Long Pond Iron Works State Park. It's a trailless peak. You're only going to find it when the book comes out, but if you go to Jennings Hollow and explore I know this guy will probably find it, Jennings Mountain. South Canals Mountain is the one that overlooks Route 23 and the Charlottesburg Reservoir on your left there. And Dunker and Buckabear Ponds they're located on the Highlands Trail in the Newark watershed. So a lot of people went to the Newark watershed in the last few days because of the state park shutdown. It was one place where you could go and hike. So we've got all these unbelievable trails to explore. We've got this amazing organization that has been keeping the trails alive and well and growing for almost 100 years. And my job is to try and make sure that the trails and our open spaces survive for the next 100 years. And the way for us to do that is not to continue to be the elves in the woods that nobody knows about. The Trail Conference has a little bit of a problem in the sense that we don't lead hikes. That's why I'm doing talks like this. We serve the parks, and people go to the parks and they enjoy the parks, and but they don't know who's making the trails. So you guys get it. You understand what it takes. And it does take about $2.5 million a year to keep 2,100 miles of trails open and safe and protected. So to all of you who are members, I know a lot of you already are members, I thank you for your support. And just tonight we have a special offer. I'm not sure if this is accurate or not. What are we doing tonight?
So it is $20 for an individual and $25 for a joint.
That's two people.
For two people. And book and membership is $30 or $35 for a joint.
Yep. And if you're already a member or you don't want to become a member but you just want the book, we're doing the books at a reduced price. Instead of $15.95, they're $13 tonight. And all the proceeds are donated to the Trail Conference as well. And I'll even sign it for you. But I really appreciate your support. The one thing that I will tell you about being a member, though, I pay my well, I'm a life member, but if I pay my $40 a year, I always pay for it with the discounts that I get. And we've got all these great businesses that support our work and give discounts to people who are Trail Conference members. So it's not a bad deal. So again, I thank you very much, and I'll be glad to take any questions you guys have about trails in West Milford, Harriman, or elsewhere. Sir?
Do you always wear long pants, and do you have everybody who hikes with you have long pants? Do you recommend that highly?
I would, yeah. I really would. I know, practicing what you preach is one thing. I tend to wear long pants all the time. I wear those ultra lights. But it really helps. It
Long
keeps.
sleeves too?
Yeah, I cheat with that a little bit, but yeah, it's not a bad idea. And the ultralight fabrics, you can get away with wearing long sleeves for most of the year, except the 95-degree days. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a decent map for the Highlands Trail from start to end?
We're working on it at the Trail Conference, but no, if you go to the Trail Conference website, you will find a guide to it, but it's pretty sketchy, especially as you get down to Hunterdon County in that area. So, West Milford, Ringwood, Sterling Forest, everything in New York, very well mapped out, okay? But once you get kind of south into Morris County, that's where things get a bit sketchy, yeah. So.
Is Emerald Forest accessible at all, or no?
Emerald Forest is accessible to the public. Problem with it is that it's, first of all, the Trail Conference doesn't maintain any trails on it. And the other problem is there's no real parking to get to it. I believe it's still owned by the Passaic River Coalition right now, but it's easy for me to get to because I live in Pine Cliff Lake, but yeah, access is a bit of an issue.
They're gonna throw you out of there, or they let you hike through there?
It should be public land unless something's changed that I don't know of. Yeah. It's all about the parking though.
And I tried that Buckabear Pond last month
Uh-huh.
on the west side of Buckabear.
Mm-hmm.
And I came down and I totally lost it. I have no idea where I was
Yeah.
going. I had to go back. I
Yeah.
got down to a spot where there was like a truck turned over on its side
Mm-hmm.
and lots of roads that went down to the water. And I said, I must be close to something if they're bringing vehicles in here.
Oh,
I went back and looked on the map. I was like, I'm glad I went back.
Mhm.
Because to keep going, it would have been a disaster.
I think I know where you were. Were you following a red trail or a bluish trail?
Red, but then it seemed like the trail
Yeah.
disappeared.
Yeah, that's a pretty sketchy trail.
On the way back, I headed towards the water,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw that there was like a Highlands marker, I think.
Yeah, that one's pretty well marked. But yeah, the red trail is very direct, but
Yeah,
kind of sketchy.
and the red
Yeah.
just kind of like went away.
Mm-hmm. It turns right and goes up the mountain, but you know, now you know.
But there were so many choices to go.
Yeah.
Wide spots that looked like this should be it. Like you said, the widest isn't always the best one to do.
Yeah, that's right. Now, the one thing I will say is that when you find a trail that's, got a blowdown across it, and it's impassable, or a marker's missing, or the trail's just in really bad shape, there is a way to go on the website and report a problem. So you can, there is a report a problem feature on the Trail Conference website. So please do that if you can. We do struggle now. I mean, volunteering is a tough thing to do these days. And New York and New Jersey rank at about the bottom in terms of volunteerism. But a lot of good people are making it happen for the Trail Conference. We've got 2,400, but a lot of people are covering large territories. And so we appreciate all volunteers and all donors alike. So, any other questions? Sir?
Not really a question, a statement. You had a Airport Fire Tower, you have it on there. If anybody hikes past Airport Tower, it says no trespassing on it. If you call the number, there's a number on that welded sign there.
Yeah.
Call them up, they will give you permission. They put that up there because they have it to them.
Yeah.
But you are actually allowed to climb the tower, and when it's occupied,
Mm-hmm. They'll let you in. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been seeing that no trespassing sign for so long now. I'm kind of blind to it, I guess. But yeah, that's good to know. And the other thing is that it's on Newark watershed property, right? So you have to have a permit to hike on it. And permits you have to get in person again now at Echo Lake Road. Yeah.
Echo Lake Road, I think that's where the office is.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's
There's 7, we figure 7 in
Yeah, we've been all,
awesome. That's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
Also Sterling Tower, right?
they're
Yeah.
restoring that, yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, it's a beautiful view up there. I remember going up there in 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was crazy. So, but
That was one thing. The other thing is I didn't hear you mention anything about walking sticks.
yeah, that's. Mhm.
Walking sticks for anybody who's worried about the snakes. If you walk along, if you hit the stick on the ground,
Mhm.
you'll feel the vibrations, and 90% of the time they'll get out of your way. Also,
Good for your knees as well.
if you're pick a whack at a tree, or wants a hollow log or something,
Mm.
bump it. Basically, it's so you don't scare them, okay, surprise them.
Yeah, yeah.
Make a noise coming through the woods, like you said before, they don't really want to do it.
The other thing that walking sticks will do for you is if you're climbing in the Catskills, for instance, you hit a certain altitude level. It's not up at the top, but it's kind of above where we hike here generally. And it's called the nettle zone. It's a terrible place. You don't want to be bushwhacking through the nettles. You can wear those long pants like we were talking about, the lightweight long pants, and the stinging nettles come right through them. And and don't scratch. When you hit the nettles, you get about 45 seconds of discomfort unless you scratch, and then you restart the clock. So, sticks are good because you can kind of whack the nettles and get most of them out of the way before you have to pass through them. So, anybody else? Yes.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to say, I know that you all teach it at the Trail
trace principle.
Yeah.
You know, over at Weiss, we just constantly are picking up
Yeah.
garbage from people, and it's very aggravating when people are on their way out of a hike and they're getting to their car and they're still just dropping it, so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess for all hike leaders, just make sure that they,
Yeah, leave no trace. Pack out what you pack in, for sure. It's gotten so bad in some places, we actually have stewards stationed at the base of mountains. You know, Catskill Summit stewards, and Breakneck Ridge is just insane. Every year, the population of hikers goes up by about 30%. And this is happening a lot where certain hikes gain internet fame, and it kind of just mushrooms up from there, and it just keeps building upon itself. And so, yeah, we do a lot of leave no trace there,
that goes
and
for
it helps.
people on the trail too.
Well, the good news is Terrace Pond is nice and clean now.
Yes, we had two cleanup trips, and a big one. What was the one most recently?
About 2 weeks ago. 15 people
Scouts?
went up and bought 15 bags of stuff.
Oh, that's great.
And they brought out a frame from a hammock, and inflatables, and broken up surfboards, and
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of
Noodles.
stuff.
Yeah. On Earth Day.
Now,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. What did you say?
that looks nice now.
Good. That's great to hear.
Really surprising how much stuff was up there the past couple of years.
Yeah, it makes such a difference too. I mean, if you hike in a place that's trashed, you know, people are going to keep trashing it, and if it's clean, yeah. So on Earth Day, my club, the West Milford 13ers, came through with bags, and we were passing by the north end of Terrace Pond. We thought we'd maybe swing around and hit other parts. It was so bad. All we could get was the north end, and our bags were completely full.
There's a couple that does the maintenance for the AT section of town. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. They put together a group which is going to be like a trail cleanup group.
That's amazing.
They
Yeah,
have physical presence and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
You know, they had an advertisement in the paper, so we saw it and see kind of stuff.
It really helps too, because I mean, when we're trying to keep maintainers out on the trail, you know, my wife's got her 1.5 mile section of a trail in Ringwood that she loves to maintain, and she's an interior designer, so she's trying to build benches on it. I'm like, stop. But you know, people take real pride in their trail, but when it gets completely trashed year after year, it's hard to keep any maintainer on them, and so you know, it's a vicious circle, and that really helps. So.
What's the flag on the mountain? And how do they get up there?
Well, do you mean on
I think
Warwick
I can see it
Turnpike?
Yeah, I think when I'm coming up Warwick Turnpike, I can see it off in the distance.
Well, I'll tell you what, this guy over here, Steve Beauchart, was the first guy, when I moved to West Milford, he was the first guy to tell me about Flagpole Vista,
Okay.
as it's called now, but he used to call it just the flagpole, right?
Yeah.
Any idea who's taking care of
I
that?
think I know who it is, but he probably doesn't want
Doesn't, yeah.
it. He known as the person who put
Does
the
it
trail
have to be
in.
changed? I'm sure from time to time, it gets tattered and.
It gets changed a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go up 2 months after having seen a nice fresh flag, and it's all ripped to shreds, so,
This is fascinating.
yeah.
It stands there all by itself. It's a
Yeah.
sight.
Yeah, there's a flag on South Canous Mountain, the one overlooking Route 23 and Echo Lake Road.
Okay.
There's one up on Prospect Rock, too, which is on Barefoot. It's actually called Bellevale Mountain in New York,
Okay.
and a bunch more around. But yeah, it's kind of fun to see them there. All right. If there aren't any more questions, I want to thank you guys again, and you know, thanks for all you're doing for the trails. All right.